You can spend a lot of money gardening, or you can spend nothing at all. The choice is completely yours. Join me today as I discuss how you can garden for free. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I'll admit over the last couple years I've spent a lot of money gardening. That's because I've only been in this garden for a couple years, so everything you see is less than 2.5 years old. Some of this I consider upfront cost, just the price of being a gardener. And I like the build, and I like adding all these things to my garden. But going into the future, I anticipate bringing the cost of gardening for me down to pretty much nothing. This is how I started, but you don't need to start this way. You can start and spend nothing from the very beginning. Let me show you how. This is the very first bed I constructed in the garden a couple years ago, and I didn't spend anything on it other than time and labor. This is a hugelkultur mound, and I'll link below to the video that shows how I did this. Essentially, I dug a big pit, and then I buried logs and branches and added my native soil to that. And over the last couple seasons, I've added wood chip mulch on top. The wood chip mulch I got for free. This has been a very productive bed, primarily for the squashes that I've grown in the last 2 seasons. The soil is key to gardening success. So, starting with something like hugelkultur, where that decomposing wood underneath adds nutrients to the soil, and then the mulch on top does the same, can be a great way to improve the soil and give yourself some place to grow without spending any money. I have another video where I show how I created the soil for this lasagna garden bed. Now, lasagna gardening is a method of using layers of organic matter like lawn clippings, leaves, kitchen scraps, cardboard, and your native soil to stack the layers, which will eventually decompose and give you some good soil. Last year, I grew some melons in here, and they did pretty well. Right now, this has become a permanent location for my blackberry plants. This fence is just to keep Mala and the deer out. You don't necessarily need a fence, but you can use a sheet composting method like lasagna gardening to build the soil and build your beds and not spend any money in the process. I know that my soil is terrible. There are no farms anywhere near me. So building the soil and improving the soil is very important for me. And for most gardeners, getting that organic matter into the soil will benefit the entire garden as a whole. You might be blessed with wonderful soil. If that's the case, then just go ahead, start digging and start putting plants in. And the plants, you don't need to spend any money on. This is my garlic bed. A couple years ago, a gardener friend of mine had grown a lot of garlic and offered up bulbs. I took those bulbs, I planted them. Last year, I saved bulbs of my own, and now I have a big bed of garlic. And I didn't pay anything to start growing these plants because I looked up a gardening friend of mine who was a good source for garlic, and now this bed is growing at no cost. Getting to know other gardeners near you is a very important step in learning how to garden for free, because we gardeners will have extra plants and we're almost always willing to give them away. These are my raspberries, the same raspberries I've been growing for more than 20 years. Now, 2 decades ago, I bought the initial plants, but since then, every year I dig up some of these raspberries as they spread, pot them up, and then give those plants away. If I want to expand my garden, well, I'll keep some of them, but I've given away dozens and dozens and dozens of these raspberry plants over the years to anyone who expressed interest. I've done the same thing with the strawberries that are growing in this bed. These Quinault strawberries go back more than 2 decades. Yeah, I bought those initial plants, but since then, I haven't bought a strawberry plant to replace the ones in this bed. The strawberries that my daughter grows are Quinault strawberries that I gave her for free. This is one of those kind of plants that propagates very easily, and many gardeners are growing. It's a great addition to a garden, and all you have to do is find a gardener who's growing them, and you can have free strawberries. Just like these chives. I got them for free from a fellow gardener, as I did with this horseradish. And all of this mint came from my brother and sister-in-law. Mint is so invasive and grows so quickly that if you're growing it, you're probably trying to get rid of it. So give it to someone who's looking to grow mint. There's a common assumption among new gardeners in particular that you need to fertilize your plants. Well, if you've built a good soil, that usually isn't necessary. But until your soil has the nutrients the plant needs, fertilizer might not be a bad idea. But it's one of those things that can be pretty expensive, and we waste a lot of money on when you can grow a plant like this, comfrey, packed with nutrients. And I have a video where I show how to make a fertilizer tea using comfrey for free. Here's another great plant that can make a wonderful fertilizer tea, stinging nettle. Now, my comfrey plants I got for free by taking root cuttings from a fellow gardener. I did buy a couple of these stinging nettle plants, but I'll never have to do that again because they come back year after year. But if you don't have access to comfrey or stinging nettle, you can achieve the same results by taking plants that you would regularly throw away or hopefully throw in the compost to make a fertilizer tea. Plants like dandelions. Most of the weeds that you're pulling from your garden, you can put in a bucket, cover with water, let it sit there for a month or so, and that extract will be loaded with the nutrients from all of those plants that you can then use to benefit your garden. When it comes time to sow your seeds, you don't need to buy seed packets. Go to your local library. There's a chance that your library has a seed library. Drawers and drawers of seed packets that gardeners have donated to the library. And you can check them out for free. That network of gardener friends that you're developing, no doubt some of them have seeds they're willing to give you. Now, there is an expectation that when you grow the plants from seeds that have been given to you, either from a fellow gardener or from the library, that you will return some seeds to them in the future. But that's no problem, because I have a whole series of videos that show how I save my own seeds to put in the garden the next season. Seeds like this jalapeno pepper and this pepperoncini hot pepper. How about a black creme tomato or a Boston pickling cucumber? Here's a pink yarrow flower and a cherry bell radish. This box has 18 jars of seeds that I've saved that are going in the garden this year. And I have many more jars in the house from what I've saved. Once you start growing, save your seeds and you'll be able to keep growing year after year without having to buy new seeds. How could you get more free than that? Now, it does take some patience and time to reach the point of having a big garden that didn't cost you anything. In this area, a pollinator garden that I'm developing and expecting to take a few years to reach the point where I'll be happy with it, I started with just a few plants and I let them go to seed and I let the seed fall naturally. Now here in early spring, I can see some of these small plants that are just starting to appear. So I purchased some of these seeds to start these plants, and that's another great way to save money. You don't have to buy a plant like these coneflowers. You can buy the coneflower seed and then grow the plants. But once the plants are in the ground, just let them go. Let those flower seeds fall, and before you know it, you'll have an entire space filled with flowers, and it may have only been a couple plants to start with. If you want or need to do raised bed gardening because of pests or poor soil, well, maybe consider something like these livestock tanks. I filled them using the same hugelkultur method that I did with that first bed I showed. Didn't cost anything to fill these beds. Now, I did buy these, but if you live in farm or ranch country, you might be able to just drive down a back road and find one of those farmers or ranchers who's swapping out their old tanks for new tanks. Those old tanks, well, they're perfect for using as a raised bed in your garden. And I'm sure you can get it for free. You should definitely have a compost system in your garden. These pallets I got for free. Now, everything that I recycle, all of that plant material, becomes compost. And I can use that compost in potting mixes and as a great soil amendment in my garden. I have piles of pine needles and grass clippings that I use as mulch and also to compost. Every year I collect bags and bags of the leaves that fall from the trees in autumn to use as mulch and to make leaf mold. Now, it's been about 1.5 years for this leaf mold pile. It's just about ready for me to harvest and begin using as a soil amendment, and it's wonderful in potting mixes. I use different types of mulches in different areas of my garden. I have wood chips on my fruit trees and in my perennial beds, and I get them for free. Now, the chips that are around my fruit trees came from a local recycling organization where they chip up the trees and branches that gardeners bring in and then give it away as free mulch. Check with your municipality because there are many city governments that do the same thing. As the city crews prune and cut down trees, they'll chip them up and offer them for free. I got these chips from Chip Drop, which does the same thing for just a few dollars. They partner with those tree cutting companies and will drop a load of wood chips for you. You can get them absolutely free by just walking up to those workers who are cutting down the trees and ask that when they're done, they drop by your house and drop the load. It'll save them a trip from probably going to a landfill and dropping the load of wood chips, and you get it delivered for free. In addition to the patience and the amount of work that you'll need to do to build a garden from nothing, you're also going to need to learn more about gardening. Well, you can do that for free as well. Sure, you can search the internet, watch all the videos I have and all the other videos that are out there, but let's assume that you have to pay for your internet and you don't want to do that. Well, look for free gardening classes. Over the years, I have taught dozens of gardening classes to the public for free on all kinds of different topics. You can go to your library again, not only to get the seeds, but to check out gardening books, to learn how to do all of these different things, from amending the soil, to mulching, to saving seeds, and all the rest that you can do. And with more knowledge, you'll begin to recognize so much of what we do as gardeners we waste money on, and we really don't need to. So think about it. Learn, practice, and do it for free. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.